This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we start from where we left yesterday, which is we completed with the item master list of inventory. The last configuration as far as materials management is concerned, which is left, that is the VAT setup. So as per the VAT percentages applicable in the region, you will have to first set up the code, which means you will have to first define the various VAT percentages that are applicable in the region, and then classify the items as per the applicable VAT rate within item VAT class. So when I go to VAT setup, what you need to define is the first section. There are multiple sections here, out of which what you need to do is go to the first setup, first section, which is VAT code setup. In the VAT code setup, you will see this is what I have defined. These are the list of various VAT percentages that are applicable. So the first column is the VAT code. You give a unique identification code to the particular VAT percentage. It is a 4-character code. You give the description and you define the rate. So I've created BT05, which is VAT 5%, and I've given the rate as 5. It is a percentage figure. That is how I define as percent here. And the corresponding ledger account code that should be affected every time you apply, every time the user applies VAT 5% on any procurement or any item. What is the corresponding ledger account code, the GL ledger account code that should be affected? So this is my corresponding ledger account code for VAT 5%. It can be the same ledger account code for all the different percentages, or it may be separate ledger account codes for each of the VAT percentages. So whatever is defined, whatever ledger account code for VAT has been defined in the chart of accounts, you will come and enter the corresponding ledger account code here against the respective VAT percentages. So here in this, the first section, all we did is just we identified the various percentages. We created the code for each of the percentages and we mapped it with the corresponding ledger account code. That's all we did. The next is the item VAT class. So the item VAT class is classifications of the VAT percentages. So you can stick to creating the item VAT class as the same as what you did in VAT code setup. So if you created like in VAT code setup, the codes that I gave to various percentages are these. So you can stick to creating the same codes in item VAT class. So this is VT00, VT05, VT08, VT10, and I've just created the item VAT classification. Now this item VAT classification is what I map in my inventory items master list. Okay, so this is the classification. This is the category that I map every item in my inventory items master list. Once you've created the item VAT class, you don't have to worry about vendor VAT class. You don't have to worry about grouping code. You need to go to link setup. In the link setup, you select the particular classification and you tell the system, like I said, I pick up VAT 05. I pick up VAT 05 and I click within the grouping code. There are two categories, refundable and non-refundable. So you select refundable and you say search. When you click on search, the system tries to locate if there is any VAT code, if there is any VAT code map with this particular classification and this grouping code. When it finds, it will list and say that VT05, which is VAT 5%, is the VAT code that you have mapped with this particular classification. When you click on search, if it is not able to find a mapping, like if I say, for example, I'll take this. If I take VAT 05 and if I had said non-refundable, I think there is no mapping. And I say search, the system will prompt saying that no VAT charges have been set up for this combination. Would you like to set up the VAT charges? So the system will prompt that it could not find a VAT percentage or a VAT code mapped to this particular item VAT class. So would you want to do it now? Would you want to set it up now? So you can say, okay, yes. And here you select the particular VAT percentage which is applicable. So VAT 05, the VAT code that I had created in the first section, this is what I select here. I say original because VAT, when applicable on the base amount of the items, should be marked as original, not on cumulative, and you say save. So this is how you map or you do the linking or the mapping of item VAT class with the respective VAT code. Now, once this link setup is done, thereafter, or even before that, when you are doing your item setup, if you remember, in the item setup, which means when you are uploading the item master list, there is this field called item VAT class. It is available in the Excel sheet also. So here in the item VAT class, you do a drop down, it will list the item VAT classes that you have classified, the classifications of VAT that you have created in the VAT setup screen. All you need to do is just define one of the classifications. So whenever this particular item, Fanta Blueberry, is, if there is VAT applicable for that item, you will apply, you will define the item VAT class. So every time, at the time of creating a purchase order or during procurement, if the item is VAT applicable, when the system finds that there is an item VAT class defined at the master here, the system will automatically pick up the VAT 5% that you have defined in the link setup and apply that automatically. So every time you're creating a purchase order, you don't have to apply that. This is a one-time setup that you need to do. And once the setup is complete, every time the purchase order is generated in the materials management module, the system will automatically apply the VAT percentage. Okay, so this is as far as the master setup and configuration of materials management is concerned. We've completed the setup. The operations of all the modules I'll start from tomorrow. I'm moving into the next module as far as the parameter setup or the configuration setup is concerned. So the next module that we move into is in accounting. We talk about accounts payables. Now, why? Because materials management and accounts payables communicate with each other. So the list of suppliers, the list of suppliers can be defined either in the payables module in this screen called create modify AP account. The same screen is also available in the materials management. I will show you within inventory. In the inventory module, this is the vendor setup screen. So in materials management, it is called vendor setup, and in accounts payable, it is called create modify account. In accounts payable, it is called create modify AP account. Both the screens are identical. There are mirror images. So you can choose to upload your list of suppliers either from the accounts payables module or from the inventory module. It doesn't matter. So whatever is convenient, you can do it. So in payables, we again I'll first start from AP parameters. Then I'll go to AP control, and then finally I'll show you how to upload the supplier list. In AP parameters, there are several parameters here. You will not require, you're not required to use all of them. The ones which are absolutely necessary is, first of all, the first and foremost, which is the bank master. So the bank master is, you're creating the various bank where the hotel has accounts. So say, for example, if there is one bank, like if I say, this is a bank which has been created, Vietcom Bank. Now, if the hotel holds two bank accounts in the same bank, then you need to create two bank IDs, because this screen, the relationship between the account in the bank and the ID of the bank is one-to-one and not one-to-many. So therefore, if say like this one, Vietcom Bank, if this is the ID has been given as BCB, this is the description. You can give the address. The contact name can be anyone who's the single point of contact for the hotel in the bank. The phone number, the email ID, and so on and so forth. So this is the account number which the hotel holds in Vietcom Bank. So just in case the hotel has two bank accounts in the same bank, you will have to create two bank IDs. So you'll have to probably create BCB1 and BCB2 and give the respective account numbers in each of the ID. Okay. Then there is this called as the GL account. This is the ledger account code of your bank ID, of your bank account. So if you have two bank accounts in the same bank, you'll ideally have two separate ledger account codes in your chart of account. So for each of the account number and the bank ID that you have created, you will have to define the corresponding ledger account code here. Then the next is the check serial number. The check serial number is required if the payments that you are making from this bank or the transactions that you're doing from this particular bank account is via checks, if you're doing it through checks. So you have to give here at the time of setting up for this particular account, all you need to do is just give the serial number of the first check leaf of the current check stationery or the checkbook. Once you give the first check serial, you give the serial number of the first check leaf, as and when whatever transactions you're posting from this particular bank, the system will automatically keep incrementing the serial number till the time your check stationery is exhausted. Once your check stationery is exhausted, when you start using a new check stationery, you will have to come back to this. You'll have to come back to the screen, open the master, use or click on the specific bank ID and re-enter the first check leaf number of the new stationery that you're using. Okay. Then if most of the transactions happening from this account code is not via check, then you can probably leave the check serial number as 0 because you're not using check stationery anyway. Bank transfer request method. Bank transfer request method, you can either print or send an email directly. So bank transfer request method is nothing. It is a document that automatically gets printed when you are releasing a payment to a supplier. The document has a written request to the bank manager to initiate the bank transfer because the application does not directly have an interface with the bank. It does not directly go and write into the portal of the bank, which is why a bank transfer request document or a letter is generated the moment you release a payment from the system, in which you are just requesting the content of that letter or the text in that letter is a request that you are making to the bank manager to initiate the bank transfer. So this bank transfer request, you can either print as a PDF on the screen and then attach it to your email, whatever you're sending, or you directly, if you set it up to email, then you need to define an email here of that contact person. So the moment you release the payment, the system, web prolific, this application will initiate an email with an attachment of the bank request letter. Okay. Real-time API transfer is not required because the system has real-time, it does not have real-time API transfer for any of the banks outside of India. And even in India, we just have it with only one single bank, which is the HDFC. So you're not to worry about this indicator at all. Transfer file type, this transfer file is nothing, but it is a list of your suppliers to whom you want to make payment and what is the amount to be paid via bank transfer. So there are two attachments that go, there are two documents that you need to send to your bank if you want to initiate a bank transfer. First being the bank transfer request, and second being the details or the list of suppliers to whom you want to do a bank transfer. So it will have this bank transfer file, can be in PDF format or it can be in CSV format. So whatever you want to set it up. So the moment you release the payment for bank transfer, there are two files that will be generated. One will be, of course, the request. The second will be the transfer file, which will have details of the supplier, the supplier's bank account number, the supplier's amount that you need to give, and any other reference IDs or any other code that are required to initiate or to do a bank transfer to the supplier's bank. Okay, so when you do this, when you are setting up your bank, there is one link here called to create file transfer template. So you can select what are the information that you need to send to your bank. So this is the bank transfer letter. This is the template. You can change the text. This is a default text that has been given. So you can change the text as per your requirement, as per the hotel's requirement, whatever information they want to give. Then the bank transfer template. Bank transfer template is the CSV or the Excel file which will have the details of your supplier. So what are the details that you want to provide or you have to provide to the bank? These are some of the default informations. All of them are ticked because it will display in the Excel sheet. Depending on the information that the bank requires to initiate a bank transfer, you can select which fields to be displayed in the respective CSV file. So once you have done this and you say save, the system will automatically pick up the template that you have defined here, and the request, the bank transfer request document will print whatever you've defined here in the text, and the transfer file will display all the information that you have selected here in the transfer file template. Okay. Bank transfer print report, and this is not required at the moment. So the most important is you create your bank master. So here you will create all the possible list of your bank accounts that the customer has. Mode of payment is required. Mode of payment is required only for bank transfers. So if, like here, there is an online transfer mode of payment created. So if there are any other types of mode of payment, say if you call it, some people call it wire transfer, some we call it RTGS, we call it IFSC or RTGS, NEFT. There are various modes of bank transfer depending on the region where the hotel is. So if they say that, yeah, online transfer is more than enough for us, you create a payment method, you create a payment mode saying OT, online transfer, and you just need to give a start sequence number and an end sequence number, which the system will automatically reinitialize once it reaches the last number. This is primarily required because our system has a design where the design requires a check number. Now, in case of bank transfer, there is no check number. So instead of a check number, what we provide to the system is a sequence number. So this is the sequence number. So if there are more than one payment methods, more than one bank payment mode you need to create, then you can give unique start sequence and end sequence number for each of the payment modes as far as this is. The mode of payment is required only if there is bank transfers happening, electronic bank transfers happening. If all payments are being made via check, then you don't have to worry about mode of payment. You don't have to create anything because all the check information and everything you've already provided in the bank master. The third important that you need to create is account group. Account group is nothing but your various categories of your suppliers. So you create various, these are the list of categories that I have that is available here for this hotel. So you can create the various supplier categories. This is account group, which is a 4-character code. You give the description. Whether it's a permanent category or a temporary category, this is purely for information. It does not affect the working of the application. The accounting method will always remain open item. You do not have to define anything here. You will not define any ledger account code in the sundry creditor account or advance account. All you need to do is just create various categories of your supplier. Rest of it is not required. These are all specific to India, so you don't need to do. I will just explain a little bit of transaction type. Transaction type are all possible transaction types of transaction which accounts payable module requires to function properly. These transaction types that you see here, they are already created in the system. You would not need to create a new transaction type at any point. However, if it is required, then this is where you will come and create a new transaction type. Now, whatever type of transaction or whatever name you give to a particular transaction type, you need to keep in mind that it will either be of type invoices. What type of transaction is this? So accounts payable, whatever name you give to the particular transaction type, the customer may say, we don't call it advances, we want to call it advance to supplier. So you can call it advance to supplier, but as far as the system is concerned, it will be a type of payment. So any type of transaction you can create, any name you can give, any ID you want to, you can give, but for the system to understand what it is, it has to be either invoices or payment or a debit note or a credit note. So these are the only four type of transactions or four form of transactions which accounts payable understands. You may want to call it anything that you want to. Okay, so when I say advances here, this is advances. Advances means advance that I'm paying to my supplier. So it is not, it is of category payment. There are settlements are allowed multiple settlements, because if I'm paying an advance of say 5,000 and I am settling it in installments, so I want multiple settlements to happen. So which is why I say multiple. Is this up now banking details now, because this is an information, this is a payment that I'm making out of my bank, so it should reflect in, it will reflect in the bank statement, which I will reconcile in the future with the system related to all the bank transactions that I have posted, which is what we call as bank reconciliation. So advances, I've said that yes. Is this the banking related transaction? I've said yes, it is a banking related transaction. I have ticked the checkbox here. And what is the corresponding transaction type that will be posted in the bank reconciliation module? So this is what I have defined here, which is PI, which means payment issued. So not only do I tell the system that it is a bank related transaction, I also have to tell the system that what is the corresponding bank type of transaction that will reflect in my bank reconciliation statement. So that is what I have chosen here from the drop down list, which is payment issued. So this drop down list, when you do a drop down here, you will see a list of transactions. So you select what is advance paid to supplier. How should it reflect in the bank reconciliation? It should be reflected as the payment issued. So this list that you see here, the list that you see here when you click on the drop down, this list is created in the bank reconciliation module, in this module, which is the bank reconciliation module. The bank reconciliation module, when Web Prolific is deployed, some of the default transactions like payment issued, payment received, check dishonored, bank charges, these are the standard bank transactions that happen all over the world. So these transaction types are already created in the system. You don't have to create anything separately. All you need to do is that in accounts payable and in accounts receivable and in general ledger, all the modules from where either you are making payment from the bank or you're receiving money into the bank, you need to map those transactions to the bank reconciliation, so that each of the transactions, whether you're receiving money or you're paying money, will reflect in the bank reconciliation module. So which is why we need to do this. So similarly, there is another transaction type which is called as payment. Payment is PM. The PM type of transaction is recorded in in accounts payable when you finally make a payment to the supplier after settling advances. The final payment that you make once you have received the bill, once you have received the invoice, and you have recorded a purchase journal. So payment, when I say payment, this is also a type of payment. There are multiple settlements, and I have also mapped it again to bank reconciliation, saying that it is a bank transaction type. and the corresponding transaction that should be posted in bank reconciliation is payment issue, which is PI. Okay. Then there is debit note. Debit note and credit note are adjustment transactions. So debit note, when you select debit note, this is of type debit note. There are multiple settlements allowed. There are no bank, this is an adjustment transaction. There is no bank involved in it. There is no money going out or money coming in, which is why you don't have to map this to the bank reconciliation module. Similarly is the credit note. Okay. Then there is something called as the PJV, the purchase journal voucher. So which what we call it is voucher payable. You may want to call it something else. The transaction type by default is VP. You may want to call it something else. You can define a new transaction type, but it will be always of type invoice. So it is an invoice related transaction. Settlements will happen multiple. This is a purchase journal you are recording. There is no money going in or money coming out, going out or coming in, which is why you don't have to map it to the bank reconciliation model. So there are a few others like reversal credit, reversal debit happens when you reverse a payment, when you reverse a purchase journal. I will tell you as we move on with the operational training. These transactions RC, RD, transfer credit, transfer debit, voucher payable, payment, debit note, credit note, balance forward, credit, balance forward, debit, advances. These are some of the standard transactions which are already defined in the system. You don't have to come and create it. Okay. Now, at the most, in case of advances, only in case of advances, which means when you're making a payment, advance payment to a supplier, some properties or some hotels may follow the policy or their accounting rule that whenever an advance is being given to a supplier, we don't want the advance money to a supplier should not affect the sundry creditors ledger account code till the time the items are delivered and the final bill is received. So in that case, some of the hotels may maintain a separate ledger account code for advance to suppliers. Only in that scenario, you will define for advances, you will define the advance to supplier ledger account code. As you see here, this is advance to supplier ledger account code. In all other cases, for advances, here you will define the sundry creditors ledger account code, which means some hotels say that the moment we make a payment to a supplier, irrespective of whether it is the final payment or an advance money we are giving, for us, it is a payment which has gone out of our bank. So we will always want the sundry creditors ledger account code to be affected. So here in GL account, in this field of GL account code, you will define the sundry creditors ledger account code. However, in situations where the accounting rule which the hotel is following, where they say that the advance to supplier is a separate ledger account code for us because it should be nullified only after the supplier has delivered the items and the bill has been received or the invoice has been received. In that scenario, for advances, this advance transaction type, the ledger account code that you will define here is advance to supplier. You are not required to define any ledger account code for any other type of transaction. Not for payment, because payment, when you say payment, the system automatically picks up the sundry creditors ledger account code. You don't have to specify. There is no need for reversal credit, reversal debit, voucher payable, nothing. Only in case of advances, you need to define a ledger account code here, or at the most, maybe someone in this case. Yeah. So because there's an opening balance, this is an opening balance, which is nothing but it is an invoice, but there is a ledger account code which has been defined in the chart of accounts specifically for opening balances of accounts payable, which is why it has been defined here. This particular transaction type, opening balances voucher payable, this transaction type will only be used for only once at the time when you're taking the hotel live. Otherwise, subsequently, for normal regular operations, this opening balance is not required. This is just a temporary transaction type which is required to create opening balances in the system when the hotel is moving from one software to ours, or it is being used for the first time. Whatever from whatever previous system that they have, it's for migration. It's to transfer the the opening balances from the previous system to web prolific, which is why it is required OP which is why it has been created here as a transaction type as OP. The name has been given as OP, opening balance voucher payable. It is of type invoices, and there can be multiple settlements, and there is a specific ledger account code. So once this ledger account code is up and running, you don't have to use, or you're not required to use this particular transaction type again. Similarly, from the previous system, there must have been a lot of debit balances, debit notes outstanding, which is why OD has been created as opening balance debit note. This actually should have been a debit note, but is marked as invoices, and there is a ledger account code defined here. Okay, rest of it is not required. So this is AP parameters. This is AP parameters. Once your AP parameters are created, you can do a AP control setup. In the AP control setup, multiple invoices per PJV, which means you are allowing the system to handle multiple bills, multiple invoices in a single purchase journal. So this is ticked. Is general ledger installed? This is always ticked. Why? Because now this is an indicator which has been given because we have some of our customers who do not use the general ledger module of web prolific. There is an interface, they use a third-party general ledger module. So when you indicate that is general ledger installed as checked, as ticked here, it means the system understands that the general ledger module is of web prolific and not a third-party application. Weekly payment day, you can set it up as anything. This has no meaning. It is just purely for information. What are the default transaction types for reversal debit type? These are already defined in the control. So when you deploy web prolific and open the AP control, you will see these already displaying here. Reversal debit, reversal credit. For transfers, transfer means when you are transferring transactions from one supplier account to another supplier account. That is what we understand as transfers. So transfer debit and transfer credit. Balance forward, balance debit forward, balance credit forward. Advance debit and advance credit is when you reverse advance transactions, that is advance credit. Auto adjustment is required for foreign currency conversion. I will explain auto adjustment later on. The default transaction types, these are also available. These four, the first four: PJV type, payment type, debit note type, credit note type. These four will already be displaying when you open the screen. It is there. What you need to define is the bank ID. So if you have multiple bank IDs, you can define one bank ID which is most frequently transacted. So here it has been defined as MUFG. The ledger account code you have to define here. This ledger account code is your sundry creditors ledger account code. This is the control account code, the AP control account code. You can define the aging periods as 30, 60, 90, 120, 150 to start with, or whatever. These are the aging buckets. So these, as per these buckets, will print the aging report in accounts payables. So by default, it is always set to 30, 60, 90, 120, and 150. If the customer says that the aging duration is very short, we want to start from 90, you can change this and move to 90, 120, 180, and so on and so forth. So you can define up to 5 buckets here. AP outstanding to date, advance outstanding, these are all, this is an information field which will display automatically based on whatever transactions that you have recorded in accounts payable. So this is the total outstanding for sundry creditors, and it is the total advance outstanding for, when I say advance outstanding, means advance money which has been paid but has not yet been settled. They have not yet been knocked off against a final payment. So that is advance outstanding of the entire of the complete creditors account. These two, withhold tax applicable, and this is not required. So this is your AP control. The AP control most often you will have to just come to AP control and check the values whether it is displaying correctly or not, and just define the bank ID and the sundry creditors ledger account code. Or at the most, you may need to redefine the aging buckets. So you have AP parameters, you have AP control, and then finally, this is your supplier list. So like I said, it is best to upload the items master list from the chain. I would suggest that it is always best to upload the list of suppliers also from the chain, so that there is a uniform ID maintained across properties, unless and until there are specific suppliers which are only for specific properties and they do not apply to all properties. In that case, you can come to the property ID and create the supplier ID. So create, modify AP account. This is the screen. On the left-hand side, you see the list of suppliers which are there in the system. Again, here you see there is something called as upload Excel. So it's exactly the same. You download the template. It's an Excel file. You fill in the fields, fill in the columns which are red in color. That means they are absolutely mandatory. You save, you come back to the screen, choose the file from the location, and you say upload data. So your entire supplier list will start appearing here. Now, the absolutely important fields when you are creating your supplier list is first and foremost the account group. Account group happens to be the category of the supplier. Then is the supplier ID, which is the account ID. This can be up to 8 characters. This is not generated automatically like the item ID. So you'll have to enter, this is a manual ID that you have to define for each of your supplier. The account name, which is the name of your supplier, the address, and for all suppliers who there is a registration number. Now this registration number can be anything. So this registration number is a field, it's a supplier registration number. This field allows you to capture any registration number of the supplier specific to the region. Like in India, we have a GST registration number. Similarly, there is a general field provided here. So whatever is the registration number applicable as far as Vietnam, Thailand, or any other region in Southeast Asia is required, you can fill in here. This is the registration number. This can be printed. This registration number can be printed on the purchase order or in the vendor master list. You need to define, you have to pick, if the supplier is a VAT registered supplier, you will have to tick this checkbox saying that, which will indicate that the supplier is VAT registered. So you tick this checkbox as VAT registered. You don't have to do anything for VAT class. This is not required. Vendor tax category is not required. Deduction is not required. Apart from this, that means account group, account ID, the address, the registration number, and VAT registered. These are the mandatory fields. Other than that, rest are not mandatory. These are absolutely not required for you because these are specific only to India. Other than that, if there are any other additional information which is specific to the region, which is and is not available in this area, in this section of the screen, it is suggested that you get in touch with Prologic First Support. You tell us what is that information that the customer wants to capture and is absolutely necessary for that particular region. We will create a code in this section. In attributes section, we will create a code where they can enter the value or whatever is the value, like specific, if say for example in Vietnam, if there is any municipality registration number which needs to be captured for suppliers other than this registration number which is already there, then you just have to let us know. We will create a code for that municipality tax registration number, and the value of that registration number can be input here. So these are some of the customizable fields. We do it like in Middle East, there are certain information which is different from India and is not available in the main area of the screen. So area or region specific information for supplier that you want to capture can be created in this section, which is attributes. All you need to do is just let us know what is that information, and then what is it called as far as the region is concerned. So we'll create a code here and you can enter the value. This registration number, this section would not be required by you. Bank info would definitely be required if the particular supplier, if the payments that you make to that particular supplier is through bank transfer, then the bank name or the bank of the supplier, the account number of the supplier, the IFSC code or any other bank address or any other code details that is required to do a bank transfer, that information is captured here in bank info. So this bank info is of the supplier's bank information. Vendor information this is again, these are all self-generating information based on whatever transactions you've posted, which is cumulative delay days, first purchase date, last purchase date, total number of purchases, and so on. Contact, if it is a company, if the supplier, if this is a company and you have a single point of contact for that particular company, for that supplier company, you can enter the details of the contact person here. Grouping is not required. Approval, I will tell you later on. So there is a concept in, when I come to approvals, I'll let you know this later when you're doing operations. Other than this, here on the right hand side, there is type of account holder, which means you're telling whether this account, whether the supplier that you're creating is a firm or an individual. This is purely for information. Whether this account is permanent or temporary, purely information. You can define the number of credit days. The number of credit days is not a mandatory field, but if you want to capture the number of credit days, then you can define the number of credit days that is allowed by the supplier. This is the check name. Check name means when you are printing an electronic check, what is the name that the system should print? So check name by default is whatever name that you have given here in the account. Can user change the check name? Now, by default, the system does not allow you to change the name in the check at the time when you are printing the check for payment. So whatever is here, it will print that. But if there is a scenario or there are cases where where the customer has to change the name when they are printing the check, maybe the check is being paid to somebody else or the name that the check should have is different from the supplier name, then you need to tick this checkbox here. You need to keep it ticked that yes, for this particular supplier, whenever it often happens that whenever we are making payment by check, the supplier requests us to put in a different name. So if you tick this indicator at the time when you are printing the check, or at the time when you're printing the check and making payment to the supplier, the system will allow you to change the name that is being displayed. Otherwise, the system will not allow you to change the name. It will print whatever is the supplier name or whatever is reflecting here in the check name. The payment notification, the notification that you can send out to the supplier saying that please find and close this check number against a payment of so on and so forth. That payment notification you can print. By default, it is print. Print means the moment you release the payment, the system will print a PDF on the screen, which you can attach and send via email later. Or you can say email. When you say email, it directly emails to the email that you have defined here. So in attributes, there is a section for email. If you have defined a valid email of the supplier here, the payment notification can be emailed directly from the system. By default, it is always set to print. So it prints a PDF and you can attach it later with your email separately. So there is debit, credit. These are all informations, number of disputed transactions. So this is my supplier list that I have uploaded completely. Basis on the supplier, I don't think I have any item purchases. Do I have any item purchases? No. So from this screen, from the master list screen, there are two options available. One is the item purchase and one is the item rejected. Now there are no transactions. Okay, this I will show you later. So as far as accounts payables is concerned, there is AP parameters, your supplier list uploaded, and the AP control. So this is as far as master configuration of AP is concerned. We move ahead, we go to accounts receivable. Accounts receivable also has these three screens that needs to be configured: AR control, AR parameters, and create modify AR account. So create modify AR account is the master list of your debtors, which again can be uploaded using an Excel sheet. Before doing this, let me just show you AR parameters. Okay. Now this bank master that you see here is exactly what is available in accounts payable. So if you have already configured your bank master in accounts payable, it will automatically reflect here. The reason of providing a bank master in AR parameter stream is for some of our customers who are not using the payables module, but they're just using the GL and accounts receivable module of WebProlific. So we've given them, so to allow them to create the master list themselves, which is why we've given this provision of bank master in AR parameters. So you can, the best or the suggested way of doing is to create the list of bank master in accounts payables, and that is exactly what will reflect here. What you need to create in AR parameters is the account group. Account group again becomes the list of your debtor categories. So what is created here is credit card, corporates, individuals, OTA, others, and travel agents. So whatever the various categories of debtors, depending on the type of business of the hotel, you can create the various debtor categories here. The information that you provide is pretty much the same as you do for supplier categories. There is a group that you will create. Now, this account group, again, I would suggest the AP parameters, like AP parameters, AR parameters should also be created at the chain level to maintain uniformity of your categories. So this is credit card. This is the name that I've given to my account group. Is it a corporate or an individual? Purely for information. Is it a permanent account or a temporary account? Purely for information. Is it open or balance forward? You will always set it to open item. And for travel agents, if the category that you've created is travel agents, and if the commission for travel agents remain standard irrespective of the travel agent, if the entire category draws the same amount of commission percentage, then you can define it here and the commission ledger account code. Otherwise, you will not define it here. If the commission percentage varies or differs from travel agent to travel agent, you are not to define the commission percentage here, neither do you have to define the ledger account code. Invoicing cycle, you can give any invoicing cycle. This is purely for information. The system does not stop you from invoicing daily, weekly, monthly, or does not have a fixed cycle. So this is just for information. This is the credit limit that you can define. The credit limit you can define for an account category, for an account group. Say travel agents, if the hotel says that our policy, we follow a policy where all travel agents are given a credit limit of 1 lakh or 50,000. So if it is at the category level, the credit limit can be defined here for each of the categories. You don't have to define a debtor account code at all. Should reminders be sent to accounts in this group? Even if you don't tick this checkbox, the system will allow you to send reminders to collect payment or to make the payment for the services that the hotel has provided. So you may not need to check this tick box. Credit limit you can define at the account group if you want to. If the credit limit is standard across the particular category. So this is account group. Transaction type is again something which you do not have to define, like I had mentioned in case of accounts payable. They are already predefined, they're already created. The concept remains exactly the same, like accounts payables. If required, if necessary, to create a new transaction type, you may want to call it anything, but it has to be of any one of these four categories. So it has to be either a type of invoice, payment, debit note, or credit note. Okay, like in accounts payables for payments, advance payments and final payment, we had mapped it to bank reconciliation. Similarly, in case of accounts receivable also, because you're receiving money either in form of advance from the debtor, or you're receiving money, receiving the final payment from the debtor. So payment received, see, this is PM. Again, it is called PM, payment received. It is of type payment. I have mapped it to bank reconciliation by ticking this checkbox saying that this is a bank-related transaction, and the corresponding transaction type for bank is PR, which is payment receipt. Similarly, if I am receiving if I'm recording receipt of money advance from the supplier, instead of recording that advance money in PMS, if I am recording the advance money that I'm receiving from my debtor in accounts receivable, then an advance transaction, you can call it AD, and you will have to map it to the bank reconciliation module. The type will be payment. For that particular, you can, like I will show you. Let me go to the chain here. Accounts receivable, AR parameters. So I go to transaction type. These are all available here. So if I have to create, if the customer says that we will record the advanced transactions in accounts receivable and not in PMS, you can create a transaction type AD. Description, you can say advance from debtor. The type will be payment. You will have to map it to bank. This is a bank related transaction, and the corresponding bank transaction type, which is payment received, and you say save. So you may want to call it whatever you want to, but it has to be of type invoice, payment, debit note, or credit note, any one of these four. You don't have to worry about this advanced flag, because this advanced flag is specific only to India operations. Okay, city code is something which is required by the system when you are receiving the payment, just to keep a tag, just to tag it as a local payment or international payment or domestic payment or international payment. So you can create the respective codes. You can just keep 2 codes. I think that should be more than enough. So the city code could ideally be what you can say LC, which is local payments, and you can say outstation payments. So this is outstation. So just 2 categories should be enough, unless and until you actually want to capture region, literally city wise. So in that case, you can create as many. Okay, there are duplicate entries because this has already been created in the property. Accounts receivables, AR parameters. So city code. Yeah, so city code, it's already here. Local clearing, outstation, online. So there are 3 categories that is. VAT code is not required. Tax master. Why is it tax master? Why is it not created in tax master? Is there any tax applicable on the payment that the hotels receive from the parties? Is there any tax applicable in regions like Thailand, Vietnam on the payment that the hotel receives from its debtors? Venkatesh, could you help me with this?
No idea about this, Vietnam and
Okay.
other countries.
Okay, just in case if there is any tax applicable on okay, there would be probably tax applicable on, say, for example, if a hotel in Vietnam is giving out some space on rent, so would that rent collection attract any form of tax?
Yes, it should be. It should be there. Some it should be tax.
It will attract tax, right?
Yes.
Okay, in that case, in such scenarios, where I say that the hotel is giving out some space on rent for a bookshop or for a spa or for a beauty parlor or for some retail outlet, the rent that the hotel is collecting against that space that they've given out to these people, that tax has to be configured in this section called tax master. So you have to give a tax type, whatever tax type is the name of the tax, the description, whether it has to be calculated inclusive or exclusive. Okay, inclusive means if you're collecting tax of if you're collecting a rent of 5,000, the amount of tax is included in 5,000. The system will do a back calculation and show you the tax component. Whereas when you say exclusive, exclusive means it will be over and above 5,000. 5,000 is the amount of rent that you're collecting, and the tax is applicable on 5,000. So that is exclusive. So you have to give a tax type, a code for that particular tax, a description, and you indicate whether it is inclusive or exclusive. Now, here, this is where you will give the percentage amount of that tax and whether that percentage should be applied on base or on cumulative, or should it be treated like a tax, which means over and above, which means exclusive. Okay, and the corresponding ledger account code of that particular tax component. So if there is 5% tax on rent that is being collected, you will give a tax type as rent tax description. You will say exclusive. There is a code that you will give to that particular 5% tax. You'll give a name. You will give the percentage is 5 here. You will say apply on tax if it is exclusive. Otherwise, you will say base or cumulative, which means base means it will apply on 5,000. Cumulative means the system will first detect if there are any other additional taxes to be applied on 5,000. After applying that additional tax, it will apply this particular tax that you are defining here and the corresponding ledger account code. So this is how you need to define the tax master, but this can be configured. We can discuss this once again much later when we have proper information whether there is tax applicable on such invoices or not. Tax for advance is not required by you. So any taxes applicable on invoices being raised in accounts receivable, which means like rent, because all other invoicing in accounts receivable will be coming in from the PMS because the invoice is already raised in PMS when the guest checks out. So other than guest related transactions, if you are raising any invoice in accounts receivable module directly and there is a tax on it, for such transactions, you need to define the tax master. Otherwise, tax master is also not required. You don't require the VAT code. So all you need as far as AR parameters is concerned, the most important is account group and tax master if applicable. Otherwise, you just need to define the account groups because transaction types are already existing. Bank master is already reflecting from accounts payables. Okay, so accounts receivables is done, AR parameters is done. We move on to uploading a list of debtors, create, modify AR accounts. None of it has any data. Okay, so it seems this does not have any data. Anyhow, the process remains exactly the same. There is an upload from Excel. So you download the template. And you fill in the columns which are marked in red, which is absolutely mandatory, and upload the list using the upload data button here. Your entire list of data would start appearing. Let me see if I can do one for you. Okay, so this is the Excel sheet. So these are the columns which are absolutely mandatory, which is account group, AR account, name, and the address. So these are red in color. So you need to enter these this list. The rest of the columns, if you want to fill in like credit limit and all, you can define, or the credit days. Rest of the black columns are not mandatory. The blue ones are not relevant to you because this is specific to India. So the blue ones you can ignore. You can just take care of the red and the black ones. The red are absolutely mandatory. The black ones you can fill in later in the screen itself, or if you want to do it right away, you can do it. So let me see if I can upload this list. Okay. Okay. Now I go here, I come back here. CC. AR parameters, account group. I think it is CC. CCRD has been created as CCR. So I will just change it. Let me change this instead of account group. I will do this CCR because this is what is created. Okay, so I say save and I yes. Let's try uploading it. Please modify AR accounts. Try doing it at the chain itself. Please modify AR accounts. I say upload from Excel. I choose the file. Open and I say upload it. Let's see what happens. So the entire list is uploaded here. So I have my ARID list of debtors created. Rest of the information you can change later on. These section optional account attributes. This section is very similar to what I had explained for the supplier list, which means any information specific to the region, you have to let us know. And once you let us know, we create a code here, and that particular information can be captured in the value column. So this is for any additional specific to the region, any additional information of debtors specific to the region. Outstanding amount for any account in this group. Now, this is a credit limit that you can define. Say, for example, the hotel says that for travel agent, for the entire category of travel agents, the credit limit has been defined as 50,000. However, within travel agents, the category of travel agents, there is one particular travel agent for which we allow a credit limit of say 1 lakh. So in that case, you can define the credit limit for that specific debtor here. So when the system reads, the system tries to first check what is defined at the account level, what is defined at the debtor level. If it finds something at the debtor level, it sends or it alerts saying that you're going over the credit limit or this debtor has crossed the credit limit, sends a notification. Otherwise, if the system does not find a credit limit at the account level, at the debtor level, it goes and checks at the account category level, account group level, and that's how it populates, or that's how it generates an alert. So this is there. Rest of the information, I don't think I need to explain because it is pretty much the same as payables, which is corporate or individual, permanent or temporary, open item, and invoicing cycle. There is no specific invoicing cycle. There is no restriction. You may define whatever you want to here. The system will still allow you to invoice as and when it is required. So there are no restrictions. It doesn't mean that if you've set the invoicing cycle of this debtor to daily, it doesn't mean that the system will prompt you to invoice daily. It will allow you to do monthly, weekly, or follow a no fixed cycle. Additional attachments, any additional attachments that you want to maintain for in form of documents for a specific supplier can be done here, attached document. So could be contract, could be whatever document that you want for the suppliers. So this is my debtor list. My debtor list is created because I uploaded it at the chain. This entire list should be available to me in each of the properties. So if I go to this property and I check accounts receivable and I go to create modify AR accounts, I will be able to see the same list. So my code, there is a uniformity maintained for the entire list of debtors across the chain. So this is my accounts receivable. So now I go to AR control. Like there is AP control, there is AR control too. In AR control, in your case, this will not be ticked because the PMS is not of Prologic first. General ledger install is ticked. Include credit notes in invoices is ticked. This ledger account code is this ledger account code is your debtors control ledger account code, which is your sundry debtors control account code. So I think there should be there's no debtor control account code. Let me see general ledgers. Modify account codes, cancel. Let me just create one because it seems the chart of accounts does not have a debtors control account code. So I go to general ledger, I go to create modify account code. There is receivables, but create receivables. Accounts receivables. This should be the one. Yeah, this should be the one. City ledger. It is defined as city ledger. So I go to accounts receivable. In accounts receive AR control, I will have to define the credit. It's there. Yeah. Oh, that is because I was at the, okay, this is the problem. It is there. So this is my ledger account code. This is the city ledger account code. So that is the ledger account code that I defined here. Rest of these, like in AP control, you don't have to enter or you don't have to define anything. It will already be visible. So front office debit transactions will appear as FD, front office credit will appear as FC, transfer debit, transfer credit, balance forward debit, balance forward credit, and auto adjustment, debit notes and credit note. Auto adjustment is for foreign exchange adjustments. Default, all invoices that are booked in accounts receivable, like the invoices for rent collection, the transaction type will be IN. Debit notes will be DN. Payments means the payment that you're receiving, the final payments that you're receiving from the debtor will be EM. Credit notes will be CN. This is the aging bucket, like there is an aging in payable. Similarly, there is an aging in accounts receivable. This is also the bucket. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buckets. Again, 30, 60, 90, 120, 180 is the default. You can change it as per the requirement of the customer. Reminders, the system allows you in Prolific, you can send up to 5 different type of reminders. So the reminder bucket is 15 days old would have this particular text, 30 days old would be this much, 45, 60, 75, and so on and so forth. So these are the reminder buckets. So there are 5 reminder buckets and 5 aging buckets. All this information that you see here, you just need to come to the screen and verify that it is visible to you. Otherwise, you don't have to enter anything because it is already predefined in the system. What you will have to define in AR control is only the ledger account code, which is your city ledger account code, or it is called the sundry debtors control account code, or it is called the debtors account code. So this is the ledger account code that you need to define. Rest is only for verification. So accounts receivable also we finished. We've done the configuration, AR control, AR parameters, and create modify AR account, which is your debtor list. Now moving on to the other 2 small modules that we have, which is bank reconciliation and general cashier. Bank reconciliation is only to reconcile the bank transactions with the electronic bank statement that the customer will receive from its bank. So the bank transaction type is the only parameter that needs to be configured. Bank transaction type, when you go to bank transaction type, you need to define, one is the payment issued, which means all the money that you are paying out of the bank. Payment received, which means all the money that you are receiving into the bank. Then there are bank charges. These are the typical bank information, bank transactions that happen, bank charges, or you may call it bank interest. Whatever is the bank charging for the transactions or for the money that you are, or for the business that you're doing with the bank, that is the bank charges. Bank charges, payment issued, and payment receipt. These 3 transactions would already be available in the system here. You don't need to create, you just need to verify that it is there or not. Bank charges, when you say the category indicator is to be others and it is a debit kind of transaction. Post general ledger will always be yes. Payment issued is the indicator will be check because it is either check payment or bank transfer. So as far as Web Prolific is concerned, the indicator should be set to check. It is a credit type of transaction. Payment receipt is also check, and it is a debit kind of transaction. It is debit because it is coming, because the money is coming into the bank. So it is, the bank account is being debited. So which is why it is debit. Payment issued is again a credit. Bank charges is set to debit, but it can either be debit or credit, whatever is the case. But I think it is ideally debit only. Rest, cash deposit, cash withdrawal, you may want to or you may not want to. These are not necessary transactions, but if required, it can be created. We will see how it is used only at the time of operation. Otherwise, the default or absolutely mandatory transactions are bank charges, bank payment issued, and payment receipt. Then then moving into the last one, which is general cashier. General cashier actually does not have much. General cashier is again for to handle petty cash. So general cashier has only a control screen, which you don't have to set up, but you just need to come in and verify and define the cashier control account. So general cashier account code. So this is your petty cash account code, the petty cash ledger account code. And there is a transfer account code that is required. How and why it is required, I will tell you when I explain the general cashier operations. But this transfer account is nothing but it is a bridge ledger account code. It just bridges, or it is a mapping. It works like a bridge between the general cashier module and the other modules like AR, AP, and GL, where you can post cash related transactions. So the transfer account code is just a dummy bridge ledger account code. These are the two things that you may need to define here in general cashier control. Transaction type for journal voucher is always cash voucher. You don't have to do anything. It will already be displaying here. Now, this is something which you may want to define depending on what the customer wants. Is the cashier allowed to post in AP and AR? So would you, depending on what the hotel says that yes, the general cashier person can post, because he will be responsible for paying cash to a supplier, say transportation charges paid in cash or freight charges paid in cash. Similarly, he is also responsible for collecting cash from debtors. It could be in form of rent, or it could be any small amount of cash which the guest is paying. So which means that the general cashier should be allowed to access the accounts receivable and the accounts payables module. In that case, you have to mark this indicator, the first indicator, as ticked. Otherwise, the system will not allow the general cashier to post into accounts payables and accounts receivables directly. He will be allowed to post a cash journal only to general ledger. Okay, so this is again something which is purely based on the decision taken by operational policies of the hotel. So you can tick or untick this option. Post one general cashier entry for every transaction. This is by default. This is tick. You don't have to touch it. This is how it works. Is the general cashier module using interface? No, we don't need to do this. Accounts if the general cashier posts or is allowed to access the accounts payables module, then all debit transactions in payables, cash related debit transactions in payables will appear as GD, which means general cashier debit. All credit transactions from general cashier to accounts payable will appear as GC. These are the default transaction types. This is again something which you don't have to define. It is already there, predefined in the system. I'm just explaining what it means. Similarly, for accounts receivables also, it will be GD and GC. So this is all that you need to verify and define in general cashier control. So now our setup is complete, which means the setup for our materials management and accounting modules are complete. We can move into the operational training now. So I go back, just give me 5 minutes, please. We will start with operations from the materials management and then move into the accounting modules. Just give me 5 minutes. Please stay online. Okay, so we start with the materials management, and this is the workflow that you see for purchasing and receiving of items from the supplier. So the entire process is initiated by the cost center, which is the consuming departments. It generates requisitions, it generates requests for items, which may go through a process of approval. If there is a process of approval applicable for that particular hotel, otherwise it becomes a purchase request and moves into the purchase department. So the purchase department will may record quotations, may receive quotations, and based on the request, it will generate a purchase order here. The purchase order, once a final copy again approved and a final copy taken of the purchase order, it is sent to the suppliers, and the suppliers then deliver the item here against the particular purchase order that had been sent to the suppliers. Upon delivering the items can be inspected, and basis on the inspection, it is taken into the store, the inventory is replenished, and once the inventory is replenished, the initial request which was generated is replenished. So this is again based on the requisition, the item is given out to the consuming departments. At the time of inspection and receiving the items into the store, there is a store receipt history which is maintained in the database. And upon receiving the items after inspection and taking and replenishing it into the inventory, the liability information, the liability is booked by a click of a button, which informs the accounts payables to process the bills of the supplier for the goods that have been delivered. So this is a very typical, straightforward purchase and receiving workflow which is followed. Based on this workflow, I will show you how the application works. So when I start from consuming department, I am starting from what we call as requisitions or indents or requests. So going back to the application, here, move to inventory. This is my inventory module. And I start with this screen. This is the screen, which is the requisitions screen. Whenever in Web Prolific, in all the modules of Web Prolific, be it the materials management or the accounting modules, whenever you select an option, whenever you click an option from the main menu, what opens up is an inquiry screen. It is a search screen. It is an inquiry screen which allows you to locate records which are already created in the system. So these are some of the filters. At the header, you will see these are some of the filters which are available. So the number is the requisition number. If you are aware of the requisition number, you can enter the number here. Otherwise, the generic search filters are the date range. This is a date from date to. This is a date range. If you're locating for a specific item, you can enter the item ID. The type is the requisition type. Now, there are different types of requisition. They all are indents, but they can be categorized into different types, which is when some of the types, let me just explain here. So when I say types of requisition, what is available is PQ. PQ is purchase request. Okay. Now, this purchase request is a request which is generated by the store to the purchase department. So this is when the stock is going down and he is about to reach the reorder level, or he has to replenish the stock. The storekeeper will raise a request which is of type PQ, and it is from the store to the purchase department. The other type of purchase type of request that we have is MQ, which is market list request. So market list request is initiated by the kitchen, goes via the store to the purchase department. These are primarily for market list items like perishable items, vegetables, dairy products, flowers, and stuff like that. So it is a purchase type of indent, but it is initiated from the kitchen and goes via the store to the purchase department. Then there is another type of request that we have, which we don't offer, we suggest, which we call as DQ. It is a purchase kind of request, but we identify it as DQ, which is, we call it indent request. This kind of request can be raised. It is always initiated by the consumption center via the store to the purchase department. These are for items which, this is normally done for items that are being procured for the first time. So an example that I can give is, say, maybe an engineering item, which is probably a drilling machine. That kind of a drilling machine is not a part of the hotel's inventory. It has never been there with the hotel. And so they are procuring. So there is a request that has been raised by the engineering department saying that this is a good drilling machine. It requires less manpower. It is more powerful and faster drilling machine, which is why we need to buy this particular item, for which engineering department will have to enter a justification. So that is, such kind of requests can be categorized or can be put under as DQ, which is indent request. Whereas purchase request is for all items which are already there in the inventory of the hotel and is required to replenish the existing stock. MQ is again for a purchase request, but specifically meant for perishable items like dairy products, vegetables, and flour, like I said. So these are the type of purchase kind of requests that are available in the system, and it can be used as per the requirement at that point of time. The other type of request that we have is issue request, or we call it issue requisition. So issue request or issue requisition is for consumption. Consumption means when one is called issue request, which is IQ, this is from the department to the store. Department to the store, which means it is like IT department requesting the general store to give them printing paper or notepads, pencils, or housekeeping store asking for guest supplies item. So this is a request which this is internal to the hotel. There is no supplier or purchasing involved. This is the department, like bakery department requesting from food store for flour, for sugar, for icing, and so on and so forth. So that is issue request. The other type of request, which is within the hotel, internal to the hotel, is transfer request. So this is inter-store stock transfer. So TQ is a request. And the example that I can give is bar requesting to the main store, because bar is also a stocking point, and if the bar is requesting for bottles of whiskey or bottles of rum or bottles of beer from the main store, it will not be considered as a consumption request, but it is a request to transfer the stock from one stock location to another. The consumption at the bar is based on whatever actual sales have happened. So if the store, when the main store is giving out bottles of beer and rum and whiskey to the bar, it should not be considered as a consumption. Rather, it is a transfer of stock. So to request a transfer of stock, the bar will raise a transfer request, which is identified as TQ. So these are some of the types of requisitions which are available in the system. And all these requisitions are created from the same screen, which is the requisition screen. So if you're trying to locate a requisition, you can enter the type of requisition also to locate. So I say PQ and I say search. So it should list the list of requisitions. So it will show me the list of requisitions which have been generated in the system. So I have PQ here. The moment I select a row in this list on the right hand side, you will see the list of items which are a part of that requisition. So this is the header information and this is the detailed information. To create a new requisition, you can click on the add button, or if you want to open an existing requisition, like this is a requisition, it's a purchase kind of requisition. The date is of 3rd April 2023. The requisition number is automatically generated by the system. When you save the requisition, it is number 2, and the purchase request has been generated from this store or department, which is 9223. It is requested to purchase. Now, if you want to open an existing requisition, you can select that particular requisition from the list and click on View Edit. So when you click on View Edit, you will see the entire details. So this is a request which has gone from Wink Bar, which is F&B store, to purchase. So these are the list of items which has been requested by the store to the purchase department to replenish. It is showing as pending approval because this hotel follows a policy of approval. So until and unless a purchase request, until and unless this requisition is approved, it will not reflect in the purchase screen, in the purchase order screen, and purchase department will not be able to generate a purchase order. So you need to approve it first, and there must be multiple levels of approval defined for this kind of a request, which is a purchase kind of request, which is why it is showing as approved, but there are 3 levels. See, there are 3 levels. So there must be some level of approval still pending, which is why it is stamped as pending approval. If you want to check what are the number of approvals defined for purchase request, if you remember yesterday, I had it was in the system admin section. In system configuration, there was this screen called approval templates. So when you go to approval templates, this is where you can define the approvals as well as you can see what is already existing. So on the left hand side, you will see these are the transactions for purchase orders, for requisitions, and for credit notes. So for requisitions, for the type PQ, so this hotel is following a concept of approval only for purchase type of requests. So which is why document flag is requisition, within which the transaction type which the system understands is PQ, which is document PQ. Document ID is also PQ. And the approvals that have been defined is so many. Okay, so there is an ID called engineering 1, FNB 1, housekeeping 1, HR 1, KC 1, WS 1. These are the list of users who have to approve a purchase kind of request, and the level of each user has been defined as 1. So engineering to Wink space, these list of user IDs have the first level of approval, and the rest starting from chief English to all this up to WEM, the level of approval that is defined as 2, which means there are 2 levels of approval. So the purchase request is still to be approved by some of the users here, which is why it is showing as pending approval. You can define the reminder days. There's a notification which the system sends as a reminder to each of these users. After how many days of creating that particular purchase request do you want the reminder to be sent? Do you want the reminder to be sent for a single day, or do you want it to be sent for 2 days or 3 days, whatever? After the reminder days expire, what is the number of escalation days? So after 2 days of reminder, if engineering user has not yet approved the purchase request, it should go to the next level, which means any of these users, which has the second level of approval. Approver amount from, you need to define the amount only if there is a amount based approval applicable. So if it is said that the kitchen manager needs to approve if the purchase request goes beyond 1 lakh, then you can define the amount here only against this particular user, which is kitchen manager. Okay. Alerts you can tick, because when you tick the alert, only then will the system send an alert and a notification to the respective users that there is a purchase request which is pending for approval at your level. SMS actually right now does not work, so you need not bother about the SMS column. Alert works, and there is a email that can be sent, which is an internal email, and it pops up at the bottom here. So you can set it up to internal. So this is how you approve. Now, right now, I will just set add row. So if you have to give approval rights to users, you click on add row. You enter the user ID. I am entering my user ID, which is supervisor. And I am setting I'm giving myself the highest level of approval here. Rest 1, and I don't need escalation days. And so I click on the save button. I've given myself the highest level of approval so that I'm able to approve whatever purchase requests that are pending, because I don't know the passwords for the other user ID. So I will, since I have logged in as a supervisor user, I will do it. So let me do it for credit notes also, because I will need it later on. Let me set it up to 1. Save. I will go for purchase orders also. So this is how you set up the approvals. And now I should be able to approve that particular purchase request, which was mapped as pending, which was stamped as pending approval. So I go to requisitions here. I locate the purchase request. This was the one. So number two was the one. Number 2, I say view edit. No, I'm still not allowed to. I think. Okay. Now I think there is a concept which they are following. Let me just check. Because again, this is an operational policy. There are some customers we have who say that if the system is that if user 1 is given the first level of approval and user 2 or user A is given the second level of approval, then the purchase request or the transaction should go through each of the levels of approval. It should not be that if user A approves, the user A should not be allowed to approve even though he has a higher authority. User A should not be allowed to approve a requisition or a transaction until and unless user A has approved, user 1 has approved it. So the idea is that nobody is surpassing the other person's hierarchy. So in that case, if that is again our operational policy, and I think this hotel is probably following that. So because it is an operational policy, I need to check the advanced control. So I go to the advanced control screen, and here I enter a part of the description and I say go to locate. No. Here. September. I don't know. Okay, so this is another of the advanced control which I was saying. It says restrict lower level approval from higher level. It is set to no, but I still don't know why it is not allowing me to approve. I'll have to check it. But if you set it to Y, it means that, you know, every user, based on the level of approval set, every user has to approve it first. The higher authority will not be allowed to approve unless and until the lower ones have approved it. So that is a restriction that you can set up if it is required based on the operations. So this is set to end though. Anyway, I think there could be a problem with the data. So I move out, I go back to requisitions. And I'm again locating number 2, search, new edit. So it is still showing me as pending approval, but I'm not allowed to approve. Let me try logging out. This needs to be fixed. I'll have to check this. Anyways, so once all the levels of approval are complete, the pending approval, this tag of pending approval will get removed and it will start reflecting in the purchase order screen, from where the purchase department can convert or generate a purchase order based on this purchase request that has been generated. Now, if you have to create a new request, a new requisition is created by clicking on the new button here. And there is a provision, again, an Excel provision here, upload. So download template. Okay, enter item detail. Okay. So before doing a download template, you will have to enter the type of requisition. So here I say PQ, purchase type of request. This is the date on which I am generating or raising the request. I can raise a backdated request also. So I have entered 1st April. Otherwise, my current business date is 5th April. So I'm raising a backdated request. I enter the store. I don't have to worry about template. I don't have to worry about Indian department. I am entering the store who is requesting or raising this purchase request. So I do a drop down here, say kitchen store default maybe. This is a store that I have selected. So kitchen store 9100 is raising a request for purchase request. I click on the enter item details button and I do a download template here. So when I do a download template, so when I do a download template, this is an Excel template that opens up. Now this Excel sheet or Excel template that you see here will list all the items for this particular store. So for 9100, because I've selected the store as 9100, which is a kitchen store, so the system lists all the items that belong to the kitchen store. So as an end user or as a user who's generating the purchase request, in this Excel sheet, he just needs to locate the items for which he's raising a request and enter the quantity that he's requesting for. So I say 10 for this, 10 for this, 20 for this, 30 for this. I go down and I do another 2, 3 of them, say 20 for this, 30 for this. So all that the user needs to do is just enter the quantity that he wants to request for each of the items. The entire list of items is available here in the Excel sheet. Now he will save this. Let me save this. Now I come back here, I choose the file. This is the file. I open and let's see what happens when I do upload data. So when I do upload data, it will show me the entire list of items for which I had entered the quantity, and it will appear here. If the user wants to change, or he finds that, okay, the quantity that he entered in the Excel sheet is incorrect, he can fix it here. He can make this 20 to 50 if he thought that whatever is entered is wrong. So that's a faster way of creating requisitions. So the entire list of items for which he entered the requested quantity is available here, and all he needs to do is click on the save button. Now, when he clicks on the save button, a requisition number is generated. This is requisition number 20. This is generated number 20. It is showing as pending approval. Why? Because again, for purchase request, the approval has been defined. Now, because I am logged in as a supervisor user now, I see that I am the one who created the requisition and I have the authority to approve, which is why this section out here called current is enabled, is editable to me. So when I do a drop down, I can approve the purchase request. If it is a purchase request created by somebody else, then after inspection, I can reject it or I can put it on hold. If I reject or put it on hold, I am supposed to give a reason here in this section. Why have I the reason section, the text here, free flowing text where I write why have I put it on hold or rejected it. Otherwise, I have the authority to approve, so I approve it from here. Approve and I say save. I do approval from here and say save, or else a person like a GM or a financial controller or anyone who is authorized to approve requisitions can use this other screen, which is called approve requisitions. Now, this approve requisitions will list all the requests which are pending for approval by the user who's logged into the system. So I, as a supervisor, log in. If since I am authorized to approve purchase request, it will list all the pending purchase requisitions that I will approve. So I can do bulk approval from here. Okay, these are some of the search filters available. Because by default approval level is 2, if I have the authority to approve at a lower level, I can enter the date range. By default, the list that appears here, the list of requisitions for pending approval that appears here are for the last 30 days. If the user wants to check for requisitions which are pending for approval for more than 30 days, he can click on the refresh button here. The filters become editable and he can enter a wider date range, or if it is a specific type of requisition that he has to approve, he can enter any of these filters and then click on the search button to filter the search. And once he has filtered the search, he can take an appropriate action. Appropriate action here, this is the action column. So he can again choose to approve, put it on hold or reject. Put it on hold, on reject, then he needs to type in the reason here. Otherwise, you just say approve, like I'm going to approve this requisition. Approve. It is just showing 16. Why is it not showing 20? So approve and I say process. Transactions has been processed according to the approval level of the user, no records found. So this is approved. Now, should ideally show me requisition number 20 as well. This should be fixed. This is another thing which needs to be fixed. I am approving this particular requisition that I just created from here because it is not reflecting in the approved requisition screen. So this is approved. Now that this requisition is approved, we can move ahead. Now it will start reflecting in the purchase order screen. So this is how you create purchase requests. This is how you create your consumption requests also, which is the issue request. Now it should start appearing in this screen, which is the purchase order screen. In the purchase order screen, again, like I said, every option that you select in Web Prolific, the first screen that opens up is an inquiry screen. This is an inquiry screen where you can enter these filters and locate purchase orders which are already existing in the system. Or else, when you have to create a new purchase order, you choose this option, which is called with purchase requisition. So when you click on with purchase requisition, these are some of the filters. I will enter the filter from first to the current date. And I click on the search button. When I click on the search button, the purchase requests which have been approved, all purchase requests which have been approved should list here. Okay, so it has listed all the items. These are the list of item IDs where there is a purchase request for all this entire list of items. Okay, so the type is all PQ, PQ, PQ. This is the requisition number, the requisition date, the unit of measurement of each of these items, the requested quantity of each of these items. So I, as a purchase in charge, or I as a person who is responsible for generating the purchase orders, I will select the items for which I want to place an order. I will select the items for which I want to raise a purchase order. So to select the items, you just need to click on this checkbox, which is create. So this is one item. I can't see my number 20. Yeah. So requisition number 20 is appearing here. These are the list of items. So all items which are a part of requisition number 20, I'm going to select by clicking the checkbox here. And then I click on the OK button. So I'm converting the request into a purchase order. So now after selecting OK, what you will see is the main screen of purchase order where you need to enter the header details. When I say header details, I mean to say the date on which the purchase order is being raised. This is by default the current business date. You can put a backdate also if you are raising a backdated purchase order. The type. That there are two types of purchase orders that can be generated. One is what is the rate contract, what we understand as the rate contract, and the other is a regular purchase order. So I enter, when I say RP, RP is a regular purchase order where I am contracting with the supplier for the quantity as well as the rate of the item. Whereas if I type CP, which is contract purchase order, okay, this is not there. Only regular purchase orders. So in case of a rate contract, I will type the category as CP, which is rate contract, where I am contracting with the supplier only for the rate of the item and not for the quantity. The quantity may vary from time to time. Whereas when I say regular purchase order, this particular purchase order or this contract is specific as far as the quantity as well as the rate of the item is concerned. So which is why the type is RP. The currency is your local currency. Right now just showing this. The date from date to is the validity period of your contract, of your purchase order. So I can say it is valid till the end of the month. and I select the supplier here to whom I'm placing an order, to whom I'm giving an order. So let me do this. Agoda company is what I have selected. This is my supplier. The moment I select the supplier, you will see the list of the items which I had selected in the previous screen. These are the list of items that I had selected in the previous screen. I click on the enter item details. You will see the quantity ordered. The quantity ordered is the quantity requested that I selected from the previous screen. Now the rate is appearing as 0. The rate is appearing as 0. Why? Because these list of items have never been procured from this supplier earlier, and it has actually never been procured at all. So there is no rate available in the system. So when you're procuring an item for the first time, you will have to define the rates. Subsequently, the system will pick up whatever is the last receipt rate of the item automatically for all the other purchase orders. So here, say I'm giving an example of 30, 40. This is the rate that I'm defining for the first time for all these items. And then after I've done this, I just click on the save button. Now the system will automatically generate a purchase order number, and that this particular purchase order, you have to take a final print of the purchase order to be able to receive the items from the supplier. So this is the purchase order number that is generated, 28. It is showing the total amount and the final amount. The total amount and the final amount right now is the same because I have not applied any additional charges, or there are no taxes applicable on this, but on the list of items, which is why total amount and final amount is the same. Total number of items is 7. Now, this is my purchase order. If you have to apply any additional charges like discounts, freights, transportation for specific items, then you need to select that particular item on which the charge is applicable, and you click on the charges link here. So I click on charges link here, the item ID will reflect, and I can select what particular charge that I want to apply. So I say, for example, this is a discount percentage that is being given. So discount percentage or a value, it is the supplier is giving me a 5% discount on cumulative for this particular item. Okay, so 5%, it has calculated 20, 5% on the value of the item, it has calculated an amount of 20, and I say save. So this is how a charge can be applied for items, on specific items. If the charge is to be applicable on the total amount of the purchase order, which is the final amount of the purchase order, that could be a transportation charge, I will choose the link from the top, which is the charges link available at the top. So I click charges here. Now here I will apply, say, extra charges delivery maybe, and I say, okay, there is an extra charge. It is a fixed amount. It is not a percentage amount. So I am entering a fixed amount, which is 100, and I say save. So this 100 will be applied on the total amount of the purchase order. So now you see that there is a difference between the final amount and the total amount. The total amount is 2330 plus 100, the final amount becomes 2430. So this is how you can apply charges to items or to the total amount of the purchase order. Once this is done, you need to take a print. In the print, you have to take a final print. Now, this final print is possible. You see, in this case, the final print is disabled. This final print is disabled. Why? Because this purchase order is not yet approved. Till the time the purchase order is not approved, you can take a print of a draft copy of the purchase order. So now I have the authority to approve. I will approve it from here, or else there is a bulk approval screen from outside, like the bulk approval of requisitions we have. There's a similar screen where the authorized person can approve multiple purchase orders at the same time. Right now I'm approving it from here. I approve, I say save. It is approved. Now, when I go to click on the print button, the final print option is enabled. So I tick final. There is an option of sending email directly to the supplier from the purchase order screen if the email is configured. If your SMTP server and the email is configured, this checkbox can be enabled. You can tick this checkbox and click on OK. It will print. The final print of the purchase order will show up here, and it will also pop up a small screen which will say type in the email ID to which you want to email the purchase order directly. So now what you will see here is the purchase order print. This purchase order print can be customized where it will have the logo of the hotel. If there are additional terms and agreements that needs to be, if they are printing purchase order on a pre-printed stationery, then all the information that is there in the pre-printed stationery can be configured. Now, all this configuration and applying the logo of the hotel is a part of Crystal Report application, the Crystal Report application and the report file which needs to be modified. How the report file needs to be modified, what modifications are required, all these things will be a part of a separate session of training, which I will schedule maybe next week or some other time, once after we've finished this entire cycle of 4 days of training. So this is the purchase order. Once you have taken the final print of the purchase order, now it is ready to be sent to the supplier. You keep one copy of the purchase order with the purchase department, and whenever the items, whenever these list of items are delivered by the supplier, you are ready to receive the items. Okay, I hope this entire cycle, whatever I've explained till now, is clear to everyone and is not confusing to anyone. Is it simple and clear?
It's okay.
Okay.
Can we get any?
It's already 12, so let's stop here right now. We resume the session tomorrow again. From here, we will start with receiving the items from the supplier, and then we will move further. The session again, the time remains same, 10 to 12 India Standard Time. So see you tomorrow, and thank you so much for being patient.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The number you have dialed is currently busy. Please try later. आपके द्वारा